you're getting me into, Bartlett.
We'll see. Soon enough. You ready to die?
Yeah, man. Bring it on.
Should be a good trip.
I hope so.
Save life or limb.
Dusty's an old Army buddy who now lives in Dallas, Texas. He's never been on a float trip, and this would be his first visit to a wilderness area. Dusty and I recall our ancestors believing wilderness to be a place to be conquered, and it's true. Since the Europeans first arrived in the Americas, wildlands have been developed at an alarming rate to meet the demands of an exploding growth of human population. The backbone of wilderness character has been lost in many areas. It wasn't until the conservation movement gained traction after World War II that wilderness was put back on the table as an instrument of our health and spiritual welfare. This movement would lead to the Wilderness Act of 1964. As a result, nearly 50 years later, this place remains to symbolize a colossal triumph of human restraint. A designated wilderness area without roads, without structures and motorized use. A landscape not to be tamed, corrupted, or marred by human impact. This week, we come to this remote pocket of the Arctic wilderness as visitors, to hunt, to hike, and to float, with hopes of self-discovery, spiritual inspiration, and personal connection to the land. Some people might be surprised to learn that roughly 15% of Alaska's remote landscape are designated wilderness areas. All land management agencies get their guidance from the Wilderness Act legislation, which states, "These areas shall be administered for the use and enjoyment of the American people, in such a manner that will leave them unimpaired for future use and enjoyment as wilderness." Also, each agency is responsible for preserving the wilderness character of the area. So land management is a huge challenge in Alaska, because agencies have to somehow balance the preservation of wilderness character but allow access to the public. The conflict is created when visitor use and neglect rises to a point that impact is created. So the preservation of wilderness character is not only for the land manager to police, it's up to the visitor. We not only have to nurture the wilderness experience, but we must also honor the heritage, and the feeling of this experience should be paid forward to future generations. If we all agree that wilderness is a symbol of a wild place, untouched by human use, so must it remain. It's our obligation to put forth that effort.
This is that same big bull from this morning. We thought he was going to move out, but he's kind of hung out munching on grass over there. So we're going to head downstream a little bit and try and come up behind him and use that draw to get close to him. And we should have a shot here within an hour or so. So we'll see what happens.
Well, we've gotten about a half a mile from camp, and that bull fed up that draw out of sight. May have gone up and over the pass. That last half mile is probably gonna be our limit. It is what it is.
I remember I wore the F out right now. I gotta catch my breath. Get some water in me. I gotta get rid of one of these layers. So maybe I was a little overconfident with my maybe have a shot in an hour thing. Because we walked for an hour and a half and Larry worked me to death. We got up here and he just kept moving up, and he's either bedded or turned the corner up there, and it's just too far for us to chase him up the hill. So I guess we'll call it a wash on this one and wait for the next one.
If we compare the perceptions of the wilderness experience, it's obvious that someone like me, having explored vast remoteness, will have different expectations and standards than someone like Dusty. Since he's never explored wilderness, his standards are much lower. If he sees an airplane or other people, he wouldn't consider the trip to be diminished in any way. His goal is to see a beautiful and remote setting and hopefully harvest his first caribou. Whereas my focus will be to manage our impact on the land and try to avoid contact with other people. We both hope to have a quality wilderness experience, but our goals and expectations are much different.
It's pretty hot today. I'd say it's almost 65, maybe 70 degrees. So I don't expect these animals to be moving a whole lot. So we're just trying to wait it out and see if we can catch any movement on these hillsides. So far, no luck other than this morning.
This area receives 50 or more visitors each year, so evidence of this use can be expected as well. So far, the only evidence of current use is a set of boot tracks on a game trail a mile from camp. One aspect of a wilderness experience that most people relate to is camp life. These times offer old friends the chance to catch up, lends time for the mind and body to recover, and provides a certain distance from civilization that's conducive to a clear and balanced perspective on life. Self-reliance is a critical responsibility. Big things like boat care on float trips, and small things like releasing tube pressure during warm periods to prevent tube ruptures. These experiences are meandering collections of wilderness lessons that improve our skills to survive, to remain safe, and to remain comfortable. It's the small details of each experience that oftentimes remind us how insignificant we really are compared to the environments we engage. Like using a well-ventilated tent on wind-blown glacial rivers, where silt is so fine that it passes through the mesh netting, and the sand in your sleeping bag is just part of the learning curve. It's this fine line we skirt at all times that determines our impression of each adventure. So a wilderness experience has to mean more than just pulling the trigger or catching fish. Because if you break this experience down to the basic level, any hunt is 99% waiting for opportunity and 1% actually getting it.
So we've been here about a day and a half, and we've only seen the one caribou and one fox. So we figured we were going to pack up camp this morning and try our luck downstream.
Of even greater importance than our harvest goals is our responsibility to erase all evidence of our presence, so that people behind us can fully appreciate the wildness of this place. So before we leave a camp behind, we dismantle our fire ring and spread the ashes, remove all trash, and erase any sign of our use. That's why the experience is such a deeply personal event. If you reach for that deeper connection to yourself with this experience, it touches you on levels that aren't simply expressed. It becomes valuable. So we express these emotions through care of the land and preservation of this experience for other people. Alright, enough of the deep pool. Here's our reality. We're in a remote area and haven't been disturbed by human encounters after 4 days of travel. But caribou were nowhere to be found. I still wanted to help Dusty achieve his harvest goals and hope for him to ultimately feel some experience of Terra Incognita. And then It happened. What I call the big letdown. A low-flying Super Cub hovered nearby for what looked to be a possible landing right on top of us. A crushing blow to Terra Incognita. Luckily, the pilot carried on upstream and we never saw him again. The mere presence of a plane suggested that we could see other people. We needed an uplifting experience to take our mind off this event, and we got it. We spotted some dark shadows darting under the boat, and it only took a single cast to make me forget about the plane. Fish on. Not only was the weather perfect, and we'd avoided seeing other people, but we were catching fish and floating a wild river through a scenic landscape. And there's nothing that tastes better than wild Arctic char. If this doesn't foster Dusty's impression of a wild place, nothing will. I've learned that a big part of the wilderness experience is the satisfaction that comes with self-reliance. Playing a part in nature, but not being the purpose of it. So far, we were both experiencing a high level of true wilderness experience. Everything about this place seemed wild, and there was no real sign of human use. Dusty even got to witness the intrinsic evolutionary processes that shape the Arctic region. A giant ice lens, roughly 150 feet across and 50 feet high. An impressive design of nature that must be seen and heard and touched to appreciate its full power. The framework of a positive and motivating wilderness experience has distinct periods of deep emotions. Discovery, excitement, challenge, anticipation, even doubt. And with any luck, your personal goals will be delivered to solidify a personal wilderness experience. Dusty's now in a state of great anticipation to achieve his goals. But his doubt was palpable. I had a strong feeling that eventually his goals would be realized. And this state of anticipation will serve him well, as being the catalyst of an impressionable collection of memories that form this adventure.
We floated a long ways today. Ended up going through a nice tight-knit little canyon with lots of good class 2+ rapids. That was pretty sweet. Lots of char fishing, man. That was the highlight of the day, I think, for me. But overall, a long paddling day. I think we covered about 20 river miles.
Hey, buddy. How you feel? Because I'm tired as a dog right now.
How'd you like those rapids?
You know, it really wasn't bad. It was fun. A little hairy, but...
I was a little bit worried about you on that first set when we first put on the life jacket.
Yeah. Because nothing to make you more nervous than when Larry says put on a life jacket. Because normally he's like, nah, it'll be fine. Shh. You know.
You did good.
Thank you.
You know, the rapids and then the fishing was incredible. Hard work, a lot of fun. I mean, got tired of picking the wrong line or getting pulled into the wrong line and getting hung up on the rocks, but other than that, man, it was a good day. It's hard work, you know.
Stay dry today?
Yeah, I did. All my gear stayed dry.
That's what it's all about, my brother.
Yeah, staying dry. No complaints so far. We caught a few fish. We've had a good time overall. But I just really like to see some animals.
That's what we came here for.
Yes, sir.
We had some unique opportunities to view Dall sheep feeding low on a hillside near the river, and this gave Dusty something to occupy his thoughts while we waited for Caribou to wander through the valley. Soon thereafter, we experienced more big letdowns in a few places along the river. The first real evidence of human neglect was a snow machine track and then a 10-foot sled deposited on the tundra and forgotten by its owner. Downstream a little farther, metal refuse and more litter. Disappointing reminders that Terra Incognita was lost in this area. The debris piles were just too large for us to pack out. so we left them there as symbols of a marred wilderness character. So we paddled on in search of uplifting opportunities. We both needed a diversion, and we got it in the form of 5 miles of continuous white water. By that afternoon, I could tell Dusty was not only growing tired, but also deflated by the absence of caribou. So we pulled over to scout for a camp, and just when we least expected it, Dusty's big moment came with great excitement for us both.
Behind the willows. Down this river, and we just stopped to see if we could find a spot to camp in. Low when we thought there weren't any caribou. Man, that's awesome.
These raw emotions have a powerful impact.
Yeah, look at that.
Dusty has just bonded with nature and is now absorbing the influence of a wilderness experience.
Look at that. Amazing.
A personal journey delivered by self-reliance and striving. It's a beautiful feeling. Once Dusty had a chance to admire his harvest, the real work was about to start. We gathered knives and game bags and made our way over to collect our food. One of the first legal responsibilities is to punch your harvest ticket. And since Dusty was a non-resident, he was required to use a metal locking tag and place that around the antler set. And since he wanted taxidermy work done on this bull, we collected the front half of the hide to be used for his mount. This would have to be properly prepared and preserved over the next couple of days, but our first priority was to remove all edible meat from this carcass, which included all 4 legs, the back straps, all neck and chest meat, the ribs, and the tenderloins. About 110 pounds of meat on the bone. Before the meat goes into game bags, we applied citric acid to help stave off bacteria and fly hatch. Once all meat was removed and properly treated, we cached it under a rain fly to keep it clean, cool, and dry. And I was happy to note the volume of caribou that had moved into the area. This gave me a great deal of hope for my future success.
We stumbled upon this bull and he hung out long enough to give us a shot, and that Weatherby rifle's amazing. That cartridge went, what did we say, through both shoulders and got some spine and lung too. And he just went down with one shot. We got him cleaned up. Doesn't look like we wasted an ounce of meat. So we've got a cache down the way. All in all, an exhilarating day, but absolutely exhausting. I'm worn out today. So, gonna get some rest, see what happens.
Meal of champions.
Yeah. Junk food. Oh man. There's nothing like whiskey and bagels.
Cheers, man.
Cheers, man.
Early the next morning, we spotted some caribou hanging out across the river. So we dragged our boats upstream to gain vantage and ferried our pack rafts across the river to pursue a stalk. There was at least one good shooter in this small group of caribou. To our misfortune, those caribou drifted onto a small parcel of private property. I was a bit surprised to find an allotment of private land within a designated wilderness area, but it's not that uncommon in Alaska. But without the landowner's consent, hunting is not allowed on private land. And although the structure has long been abandoned, we weren't going to break the law to harvest a caribou. So we watched a nice bull enjoying his freedom. I was optimistic, just a matter of time. Back in camp, we had a lot of work to do on Dusty's cape. The first step was to remove the skull and prep the cape by trimming all tissue off the hide. Then I had to turn the ears, split the lips and nose, and carefully preserve the eyelids. Only after all this work is done, we were able to add salt and worked it into the hide. This expedites drying and helps lock in the hair follicles. Beyond hide care, the meat has to be carefully managed to prevent spoilage. In this climate, our goal was to help lower deep tissue core temperatures to at least 50 degrees Fahrenheit. In this environment, it should take about 30 hours if handled effectively. To do this, we provided shade and cached the meat in a well-ventilated area and kept the meat off the ground. By tomorrow, this meat would be well preserved and adequately cooled by airflow. Once there's fresh meat in camp, mealtime never comes too soon. The tenderloins are the first to go. In honor of wilderness ethics, we cook mainly over a stove so that food and odors are better contained. This has less impact on the land.
What manners don't count for you, number 3?
It's the morning of day 6, and it's still pretty early. We got up after a good long rain last night. Clouds are still pretty broken, but mostly cloudy today, and pretty chilly. I'd say it's in the mid-40s. Got a bull and a small group of cows that are making their way slowly down toward the river from up in that valley where we were yesterday glassing. And we're going to hope for the best. It might be the same bull that I let go last night, but if so, his luck's going to be different today. good quick stalk. Everything worked out textbook. We made it over my shoulders from across the camp, ferried the river, and walked up about 600 or 700 yards up to this little knoll. Perfect little grass perch that I could snipe through, and 250-yard shot, not bad. Good walk back. Good weather today. No sun, no rain. It's a good day to get bloody. Anyway, now it's time for the work again.
We hadn't been working the past hour and a half? I don't know about you, but I have. Whole thing, huh?
Not bad, huh?
Not bad. I'm glad I don't have to carry that pack though.
Well, this is the way other hunters do it. Whole caribou on their back, antlers strapped down securely, and hopefully you got a good pack frame, because what do you figure that's
Good,
with
huh?
all my gear, it's probably 120 pounds.
Easily.
So now we'll see. Oh man, it's like carrying a 6th grader on your back for a half a mile. A plump, juicy 6th grader.
All right, don't wait on me. I'll gather this and go.
Okay. When we got back to camp, it was windy and cool, about 43 degrees Fahrenheit. My game meat needed to cool down and develop a protective crust before storing it permanently inside game bags. The bottom of my pack wrap provided a clean surface to lay out meat cuts for rapid cooling. The wind also helped dry out bloody game bags. Over in the meat tent, Dusty's game had finally reached an acceptable deep tissue temperature of nearly 50 degrees. This meat was in good shape. We could finally relax and settle into camp life. About the only time we cook over an open fire is when we eat ribs. And before we leave this camp, we'll dismantle our fire ring and toss greasy and charred rocks into the river to help erase our presence.
I like my meat black. What do you think of the hunt overall?
It's fantastic, man. It's just been unbelievable. Really and truly a lifelong dream has come to fruition. I mean, it's come true. And,
Been a lot more work than you thought, or was it about par for course?
about par for what I thought. I figured we would get into some stuff that was a little too taxing for me, and I pushed myself and had to take plenty of breaks, but all in all, in line with expectations, I would say. I was really afraid of getting something down several miles from camp, like you said, next hill, end up chasing something a long way, and just to get a good shot, packing it back was what I was most worried about. Since we've started the trip, what I've been most worried about is dumping the raft, getting cold and wet. That's all gone pretty well too. Had a lot of fun on the water, and that was a lot of work too.
Not seeing anyone else has been a bonus for me.
Yeah.
Felt like we've had this whole country to ourselves.
Yeah. 2 good bulls. A lot of good meat. A lot of good times.
We're taking good care of the meat too. It looks good.
Yeah.
Core temperatures are working out. Should be fine for a couple more days. It's good stuff, man. I'm glad you're here.
Man, me too. Me too.
Let's not make it another 15 years.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding.
So it's day 7, and we called the air charter this morning and scheduled an early pickup, but they won't be able to get us until tomorrow, so we're going to hopefully be departing before noon tomorrow. We spent the last couple of days hunting a caribou for me and also taking care of Dusty's Cape. So we always forget how much time that actually takes, but in between stalking pursuits and lunch, dinner, etc., you know, having to flesh out the face, turn the lips, ears, nose, all of that takes a lot of time and a lot of salt. Got all the meat down by the river. We're just going to hang out today. If the weather holds out, break camp down and float down to the takeout today.
Here's a quick rundown on how we prepare our pack rafts for hauling meat. To start with, weight distribution and a low center of gravity is critical to provide maximized draft and paddling performance. The mesh cargo sling provides adequate suspension and ventilation. All meat should be loaded equally balanced, and then antler sets nested wherever the load allows. All meat and antlers are tightly secured for transport, and parachute cord is a lightweight option. Other gear is loaded wherever it fits to provide balanced distribution and paddling comfort. Carabiners are used on all bags that will be accessed regularly on the drift. I also use a 12-foot cam strap to secure awkward backpacks. This will serve as a nice backrest on the float. I filmed this hunt with a Canon XA10 high-definition video camera and one GoPro Hero. Having separate pack rafts allowed us to be completely self-sufficient on this float hunt, and I believe this option added a great deal to Dusty's first wilderness experience. And overall, Dusty was delivered a high-quality wilderness experience, despite some obvious letdowns of human use. But for me, the sense of Terra Incognita was diminished by the visual scars of careless visitors. At this point, I'm still on the search for the holy grail of wilderness experiences, a completely isolated river system where no other humans have yet to explore, an obscure spot on the map where land managers and pilots have no knowledge of possible route selection, access, or human use.